everybody. Thank you so much for the amazing introduction by Mr. Anand. Thank you so much to past associates for organizing this lecture. And thank you to everybody who's here in spite of Karthikeyan and Gajah cyclone threats. So that shows your interest in this field. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. So he has most of my introduction done, so I'll just tell you about the law jurist. So I'm the CEO of Law Jurist Company. It's founded by me, but there's a network of lawyers across the world in this company. So we have lawyers qualified in US, UK, New Zealand, Canada, and many other jurisdictions. Our main clients would be law firms rather than business clients. We seek to provide advisory and research services to law firms across the world. For example, if your client in India has business dealings in Europe and they need some advice on the IP matters in Europe, the traditional route would be you would go and engage a law firm in Europe, but that would be very expensive both for you as a law firm and for your client. But what we do is that we bring the lawyer to your case, and we would offer the service at roughly half the fees that you would expect to pay overseas. The reason we're able to give this much of a downsize in the fees is because our company is completely cloud-based. We have a head office in London, but other than that, it's a completely cloud-based service. So we can transfer the savings in overheads to our clients. Right now, we're hoping to work with a lot of law firms across India, and I'm hoping we can work with many lawyers here in presence today. So, on to artificial intelligence. So, like Mr. Anand said, artificial intelligence is the next big thing in the world. Most people would approach artificial intelligence from a very scientific or technological perspective, but I can assure you with a lot of conviction, artificial intelligence is going to change the legal world completely. In every single subject, not just say discovery or predictive analytics, but it's going to change the law and the legal business as you know it into something completely new. So this lecture will focus on three main parts. The first part will talk about artificial intelligence and why it's so impressive and what exactly is happening in the AI field right now. The second part will talk about how changes in AI is affecting and changing the legal profession. And the third part of the lecture, my favorite, is about how AI has led to military robots. And many countries are seeking to acquire military technology in AI, and why law and lawyers should try and regulate AI. So, on to the first part of the lecture, let's talk about why AI is so interesting. PricewaterhouseCoopers, a global leading accountancy and research firm, has estimated that as early as 2030, that's 12 years from now, AI would have expanded the global market by 15.7 trillion US dollars. Not million or billion, but trillion US dollars. 12 years from now. That alone should be sufficient reason for anybody to be interested in AI. But a few more interesting facts. Element AI, another research company, has estimated that in terms of talent available across the world, there are just 22,000 people who are trained at the PhD level as far as AI is concerned. AI is in its baby natal stages and it's set to grow into a massive field, and now is the time for all of us to be a part of that change. That picture, that lady there is Sophia. It's the first socio-humanoid robot that's been developed in Hong Kong. It's the first robot to receive citizenship of any country in the world. Saudi Arabia has given citizenship to this robot. So we're all lawyers here. Just think about the immediate legal points when you get citizenship. You have housing benefits, social security benefits, voting rights, and so many more legal benefits that arise out of citizenship. We live in a world today when a robot is being given citizenship, but people from India who've been working in Saudi Arabia for decades can't even think about a permanent residency status in Saudi Arabia. And lastly, Estonia, which is a country very close to Russia, is in between Russia and Norway. It's the global leader in e-governance, and Estonia is also the leader as far as AI liability is concerned. It's the first country to have developed a bill on artificial intelligence liability, which is coming to the parliament in Estonia next year. Their focus is to make sure many more companies would come to Estonia to invest in artificial intelligence. So let's talk about the speed at which artificial intelligence really is changing and developing. Computer experts and roboticists go by this rule called the Moore's Law. What does the Moore's Law say? It says that the number of transistors that you can put into a chip, a single chip, will double for every 18 to 24 months, which means for every 2 years, computer technology is developing. But you might think that this is a linear development, but no. Let me tell you a short story about a chess master who came to play chess in an Indian king's court. So this chess master comes to India and he plays chess with all the champions in the country and he wins everybody. The king promises the chess master reward, any rewards that you would want, property, palaces, money. But the chess master says, just give me one pile of rice for every square there is on the chessboard. So the king gets offended, thinking that this is too cheap. You've heard the story? Have you heard the story? No.
Something to do with we have to go.
Sort of.
Yeah.
So the king gets offended when he starts putting one pile of rice on the first square. But then when they go to the second square, the chess master says, double my pile of rice. So for every square, the amount of pile of rice placed is doubled. By the time the 64th square is reached, the chess master has become the king, and the king has become a pauper because he has to sell everything to pay the chess master. Linear versus exponential growth. We might think computer chips, the amount of computer transistors that we can place in a computer chip doubling for every 2 years might not be a very fast development, but it's a linear versus exponential perspective that we must take here. Right now, AI technology and just technology generally is within the first 32 squares of a chessboard. We're in the first half of development. From now onwards, development is going to double really, really fast, and AI would be here before we know it. Just look at your cell phones. 15 years ago, you're using those fat Nokia soapbox kind of phones, and look at your phones now. You have the whole world in your palm, and that's just 15 years. So that's the rate at which technology is developing right now. That is IBM's Watson, which is the current pride of artificial intelligence. That is not just a software, that is a computer system. It's a question-answering computer system. It was unveiled in 2011 in a game of Jeopardy against world champions. Jeopardy is a game which really has the questioner asking you questions about a very wide range of topics. It could be anything. It could be about cartoon, movies, history, politics. It could be literally anything. And you have to give an answer to the question within 3 seconds to earn the money and go to the next level. So it's in this competition that Watson was unveiled. And just look at how Watson fared. That's a video of Watson playing against world champions. Just take a look at the amount of money Watson makes.
Gentlemen? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. What do you say we play Jeopardy? Let's get right into the Jeopardy round. These categories: a man, a plane, a canal, Erie, Chicks Dig Me, children's book titles, My Michelle, MC5, and finally vocabulary. Ken, you're in the first position. Please make a selection.
I've never said this on TV. Chicks Dig Me for 200, please.
Kathleen Kenyon's excavation of this city mentioned in Joshua showed the walls had been repaired 17 times. Watson.
What is Jericho?
Correct.
400, same category.
This mystery author and her archaeologist hubby dug in hopes of finding the lost Syrian city of Urkesh. Watson?
Who is Agatha Christie?
Correct.
Same category, 600.
At the Olduvai Gorge in 1959, she and hubby Lewis found a 1.75 million year old Australopithecus Boise-eyed skull. Watson?
Who is Mary Leakey?
You're right.
800, same category.
Harriet Boyd Hawes was the first woman to discover and excavate a Minoan settlement on this island. Watson?
What is Crete?
Yes.
Let's finish Chicks Dig Me.
At Mount Carmel in Israel, Dorothy Garag was the first to find this prehistoric human skeleton outside of Europe. Ken?
What is Neanderthal?
You're right.
Let's go to children's book titles for 200.
Marjorie Williams' story of a stuffed toy that comes to life, the blank rabbit. Brad?
What is Velveteen?
You're right.
MC5 for 200, please.
He's worth every penny as Alfred Pennyworth in The Dark Knight. Brad again.
Who is Michael Caine?
You're right.
MC5 for, let's jump down to 800, please.
Edgar Degas' style influenced that of this female American impressionist. Brad.
Who is Mary Cassatt?
Correct.
And MC5 for 1,000.
The film Gigi gave him his signature song, Thank Heaven for Little Girls. Watson.
Who is Maurice Chevalier?
Correct.
Same category, 400.
The parents of this 52nd governor of New York immigrated to the United States from Salerno, Italy. Watson?
Who is Mario Cuomo?
Correct.
Let's finish MC5.
This child star got his first on-screen kiss in My Girl. Ken?
This is Macaulay Culkin.
Correct.
Children's book titles 400.
By Judith Bjorst, Alexander and the Terrible, Terrible, No Good, Blank, Blank Day. Ken?
What is very bad?
Correct.
Book title 600.
By Dr. Seuss, The Blank Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins. Ken again.
What is 500?
You're right.
Book titles 800.
By Maurice Sendak, In the Blank Kitchen. Ken?
What is Night?
Correct.
Book titles 1000.
A classic by Crockett Johnson, Harold and the Blank Crayon. Watson?
What is purple?
Correct. Taking you to 4,400 and taking us to our first break. We hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. We'll be right back to this.
So that was a short snippet of Watson playing Jeopardy against world champions. By the end of that game, Watson made $1 million, far ahead of all the other champions who played the game. Now, the important point to note here is that Watson does not have access to the internet. Watson was not using the internet to find the answers to the questions. Watson has a very large body of data fed into the computer, into Watson, and Watson semantically goes through all of the data and comes up with the answer within a few seconds. So as you notice, Watson was responding to questions without anybody typing into Watson what the question is or what the answer should be. So where does Watson stay right now? Watson is the biggest challenge to white-collar industries across the world. The first industry that's been affected is the medical field, and Watson has started replacing a few doctors in lung treatment, therapies, and procedures. Watson has been making very key decisions on what sort of treatment should be given to patients as far as lung treatment is concerned. A fun statistic here, close to 90% of nurses that use Watson have admitted that they blindly listen to what Watson says. They don't really think about whether what Watson says is correct or it could be wrong. They assume that what Watson says is by default correct. Now, in a recent competition that was held to figure out how and what else should Watson be used for, the award-winning entry stated that Watson should be brought to the legal field. So artificial intelligence is coming to law, to our profession, and in fact it's already here as we speak. That brings us to the second part of the lecture, how does artificial intelligence affect the legal profession? So it does affect the legal profession in many ways, just like technology has changed our lives, like cell phones and faxes, emails, everything has just changed the way we run business and we do our profession. But I can't cover every single change in this lecture, so I'll just talk about 4 main changes that will happen in the legal profession. The first one is how we do discovery, keyword searching. The second one is legal searches. Third one, document generation. And the fourth one, predictive analytics. We'll look at the first one. Discovery. So machine intelligence already works in discovery. What is discovery? When we go into Westlaw or LexisNexis or any of your legal databases that you use, you type in a keyword hoping to get all the relevant results. So that is called e-discovery, but it's a very blunt instrument because it could be over-inclusive, it could be under-inclusive. Say you want all the cases dealing with bonds and you go to Westlaw and you type bonds. Sometimes you might not get the cases that you need, and sometimes you will get the cases that you don't need. So that is keyword searching, that's e-discovery. This process is about to change thanks to artificial intelligence. It has already changed because predictive coding is being applied to discovery now. Now what is predictive coding? Computer technicians, they write algorithms which help to identify if a legal document would be relevant to a lawyer or not. And this result is a lot more accurate than e-discovery. So one of the companies that provides this service is called Modus. Right? Now how has this changed the legal profession? How will this change the legal profession? Keyword searching is one of the most basic functions of a lawyer or a paralegal in a law firm. But now, with this technology of discovery, the software that can do this lies with companies outside the legal profession, like Modus. So if a law firm wants to benefit from this software, they have to go to the company that holds the software. They can't do it themselves. So it's not like keyword searching where Westlaw and LexisNexis gives you that software, the technology for free. Now, a part of the most fundamental and a very basic function of a lawyer might be and could be outsourced to a company outside the legal profession. Right. The second aspect of the legal profession that will be affected is legal search. Now, this is a bit close to discovery, but I'm approaching legal search from the value of a precedent. When a client comes to us with their case and they describe their case to us, the first thing that they want to know is whether they have a winning case in hand. If they go to the courts, can they win? And how do lawyers reach judgments based on whether the client will win or not? We look at what the law is, and when we do that, we don't just look at what the statutes and what the parliaments have passed. We look at what the judges have said. We look at what the courts have ruled, and that's precedent. So a good lawyer will need to be able to identify the correct precedents when a client comes to us. If a client comes to us for a breach of contract case, we need to know what is the leading law and leading judgments on breach of contract. So how do we do that? Before technology and computer was invented, we used to go and get those fat books, law reports, open them and look up all the cases, and you have to read through everything. And then with technology such as e-discovery, we started going to databases and you start searching for relevant cases. But now, artificial intelligence has changed legal search completely. Just like how Watson can go through a large body of text and give you an answer, artificial intelligence can provide you with the complete list of relevant precedents, sometimes more accurately than a lawyer can, because that's the amount of data that Watson can go through within seconds, which would take lawyers like a few weeks to go through human effort. Let's look at this video.
Todd's an exceptional lawyer with tons of clients. Todd doesn't understand artificial intelligence and probably thinks machines can take over the world. But in the never-changing legal market, he knows that he's got to remain competitive. But Todd's stuck in the mundane and repetitive task of legal research that's weighing him down with unbillable hours, and hardly any time to focus his time on what's most important, his clients. So Todd turned a new leaf and put his trust in artificial intelligence with Ross, his own personal artificially intelligent researcher. Ross has access to a vast legal database that effortlessly reads through and finds numerous answers for any legal question. You can ask Ross questions in natural language, the same way you would any other lawyer. Ross runs in the cloud, can be set up in seconds, and literally takes just minutes to master. All you need is an internet connection. No more wasted time on training sessions and lessons. Ross gives Todd more time to focus on his clients, which has definitely changed Todd's opinion about artificial intelligence. So join Todd and hire Ross today. Purchase a subscription at rossintelligence.com. Let Ross help you accomplish more than you ever thought humanly possible.
I'm not here to sell you Ross Intelligence. I don't work for the company. But Ross Intelligence is one of the softwares that is changing the legal profession as we speak. It is pretty much a virtual lawyer. It's a virtual lawyer. Essentially, it's a legal search assistant. Artificial intelligent legal search assistant. But it operates pretty much as a lawyer. Just like how Watson could respond to questions. You could go to Ross and ask it a question, and it would give you the correct legal answer. Now, what else does Ross do that lawyers traditionally do? When a client comes to us, and we have maybe a corporate client, for example, we send them regular circulars. We send them newsletters on updates in the legal field. Now, Ross does that automatically. Ross doesn't need keywords. It's not like Google Alert when you go to Google and you type in an alert and Google sends you links to relevant articles. Ross Intelligence, by default, goes out into the world, the data world, finds all the relevant changes to the law that's happening right now, and automatically sends it out to the client. That's one. Two, when you're uploading a brief or a plea to Ross Intelligence or a contract, it would immediately and automatically provide you with a list of cases, hyperlinked, and it would tell you if that's received positive judicial treatment or negative judicial treatment. So as you're uploading information to Ross Intelligence, you would be able to judge the value and strength of your case. So that's one of those softwares that's changing the industry in legal search. What else can artificial intelligence do in terms of precedent? Now, previously I told you AI can help you find all the relevant cases, all the precedent that would apply. But now AI is taking it one step further, and they can attach a value to the precedent. So for example, even though we have a precedent, say from the High Court or a magistrate court, a lot of its value depends on how you use it. It depends on the lawyer who's using it, the persuasiveness of the precedent, the court in which you use the precedent, and the judge before whom you're appearing. So all these factors affect the value of a precedent. And that is one of the most important jobs of a lawyer, to be able to decide whether the case in front of you can win based on existing precedent. Now, artificial intelligence is doing that job for you. AI can come in, it can search through all the cases heard, say in the Chennnai High Court, and it can decide on the mindset of the judges, how do they approach cases, and based on that, it can attach a value to the precedent before you. That's one of the most important jobs a lawyer would do, whether a precedent is applicable or how do you break a precedent. Now AI is helping you do that. Oh yeah, and BriefMind is one of those companies that's providing this service. Once again, that's a company that lies outside the legal profession. It's a Silicon Valley company, if I'm not wrong. I'm not too sure about that, but BriefMind is a market leader in this sort of intelligence, and it's not part of the legal profession. Law firms are tying up with BriefMind to get this service. Document generation. I think every lawyer here would have done it at some point in time, just generating standard form documents, standard contracts, employee contracts, draft wills. It's one of the most important but a very basic and mundane aspect of working as a lawyer, dealing with boxes of documents, right? So in law firms, and I'm sure this is universal across the world, in India as well, I'm very sure law firms would employ junior lawyers or paralegals who would be doing a lot more of the very basic paperwork, and the senior lawyers would come in at the more complex parts of the process. But now, artificial intelligence is filling in these forms for you. And when I say for you, I don't mean the lawyers and law firms, but I mean the clients. Clients are going to artificial intelligence software to get their documents generated, sometimes for free. I'm sure everybody's heard about LegalZoom. It's one of the market leaders. It is the market leader in this field of document generation. Now, if I need a draft will, previously I would go to a lawyer and I would ask him, I would provide all my information about my assets, and they would provide me with a draft will before we register the will. But now, LegalZoom, which is an internet-based software, I just have to go to LegalZoom, submit all my asset values and asset details, and it provides you with a draft will, which then needs to be registered. But it does most of the work a lawyer does. Now, the one field that would be immediately affected by artificial intelligence would be trusts and estate planning. The reason for that is that trusts and estate planning is a very settled area of law. Not too many surprises, and it has very few forms. Pretty much most of the work you do might be repetitive unless you're dealing with very high net worth clients. And that's when you start getting all those very weird requests in your wills. Otherwise, it's a very straightforward process. So LegalZoom has changed trusts and estate planning law substantially. In 2011, they had 2 million customers using their services. And that's up to 2011, just 2 million users. Just think about the number of clients that law firms and the legal profession lost to LegalZoom just in trusts and estate planning. But artificial intelligence, think about the chess game again. It's developing at a speed where document generation will apply to other fields of law as well. For example, Fenwick & West, that's a Silicon Valley-based company. They provide a software which automatically gives you all the documents that you would need for a startup to incorporate. So all the incorporation documents that you would need to register, Fenwick & West software does it automatically for you. And traditionally in the US, that would involve 20 to 40 hours of billable lawyers' hours for that kind of work to be done. And Fenwick & West does it within, what, an hour or much less. Predictive analytics is related to precedent, like I said. A lot of a lawyer's job really lies in predicting if their client can win or not. And yes, next you have to help the client win, but the first step is to decide whether your client has a good case or not. Now, like, just think about Watson again. Watson is almost always going to be able to process so much more documents than a human lawyer could. Now, law is one of those most data-rich industries in the world. There's just centuries of judgments, laws, treaties, cases, textbooks, journal articles, ratio decidendi. There's so much to know. And if all of this can be fed into one computer, the computer is almost always going to be able to predict more accurately than a lawyer as to the case of a client. Now, I wouldn't say this would replace the role of a lawyer, because even if predictive analytics helps a client decide whether they have a winning case or not, the lawyer has to come up with a strategy which helps the client win. So the lawyer will still be relevant, but a lot of the work that they do in predicting the case for the client would be lost out to artificial intelligence, machine intelligence. But at the same time, the one field of law that will be affected with predictive analytics would be litigation. The number of cases going to courts will fall the moment a client knows that they don't have a winning case. So imagine the probability of winning your case is 20%. No client is going to want to go to court, spend that kind of money, and lose. But the good news is, and I feel everything in life has to be seen with a perspective. With the right perspective, everything can be beneficial. Now the good news with that is that there will be a rise in ADR. People will want to mediate and arbitrate instead of litigate once they know that they have a losing case in hand. So everybody has a smooth resolution. Right, so those are the 4 areas of law which will be directly affected by artificial intelligence as we know it right now. So what has been the response across the world? What should we do as lawyers? Should we protect ourselves and our jobs? One of the most popular responses from lawyers and professionals from every field is to bar AI. So in the US, there's been substantial calls to use bar council regulations to prohibit the use of artificial intelligence in the legal field. Essentially what this means is that you're making sure only a lawyer who goes to a law school, has done bar, trained under a lawyer, and is certified, only that person can provide legal services. A machine, like Ross Intelligence or Watson, has not been to law school, has not cleared the bar, so that should be barred from providing legal services. This has been a very popular approach, especially in the US. But In my opinion, that just doesn't work in practice. In paper, it might work, but in practice, the artificial intelligence market, as far as legal services are concerned, is very heavily deregulated. Think about, once again, Ross Intelligence, right? That's a software that's available on the internet. You don't have to go to an office, you don't have to meet anybody to buy that software, you just have to go to the internet. So, say the Chennai Bar Council, I hope there's a Bar Council in Chennai. The Chennai Bar Council, say if they prohibit artificial intelligence, a client could still just go to the internet and buy this service from a lawyer, from a software in the US. So the market is so deregulated right now, anything that you put out through the parliament or you put out through the Bar Council regulation is only going to add strength to the artificial intelligence software. Like I said, LegalZoom in 2011 had 2 million users. Rocket Lawyer had 70,000 users a day in 2011 and its revenue was $10 million. This is 7 years ago. Now think about the kind of money they'll be making now and the number of users who will be using these services. So like I said, the right way wouldn't be to bar artificial intelligence. In every single field, in every single specialization in this world, be it medicine, law, or even politics, incorporating technology into your profession has always led to success. Refusing and refuting technology has pretty much always led to failures. For example, unless you're a lawyer who has a 50 or 40 year of experience and goodwill to your name and everybody knows you and they want to come to you, unless you're that lawyer, most people will suffer if they refuse and refute artificial intelligence. So, my personal opinion as far as the legal profession and AI is concerned is that just like how we started using Facebook, Twitter, and just even your cell phones and emails to our advantage to reach out to more clients, AI should be incorporated into our profession. Human intelligence plus artificial intelligence is always going to be greater than just human intelligence or just artificial intelligence. Right now, like I said, AI is still in its natal stages, and this is the best time to incorporate any software, any services that AI has to offer into our profession. Now think about this, if you have an assistant like Ross Intelligence, you would save so many hours, you would save days that you would spend otherwise in doing very basic legal research. And sometimes you wouldn't be able to charge your client all the hours you spent on legal research, just searching through databases. You might or you might not be able to charge. That comes on every individual lawyer's billing strategy. But otherwise, if you have Ross Intelligence doing all of that work for you, you would be able to focus on your client a lot more. You would be able to focus on legal strategy a lot more, and that might actually add a lot of value to your service. So, as far as I'm concerned, I feel that pretty much every lawyer and every law firm across the world, they would benefit from artificial intelligence. Yes, there will be some losses of jobs in the legal profession because, for example, document generation, once software start doing document generation, the lawyers and the junior lawyers or the paralegals who work on document generation in many offices or register offices, they might start losing their jobs because people don't need to queue up to go and get these documents from them, or you don't have to pay so much. But that's just a small change that's to be expected when any technological revolution happens. Apart from that, if you're a lawyer that focuses on very specialist areas of law, like think about space law, for example, or weapons law, or artificial intelligence law, these are very niche and very, very new fields of law. AI has not caught up to these fields yet, and it wouldn't catch up anytime soon. The reason for that is that the state of technology in AI right now excels in patent finding. AI is very useful to find patents across a large body of data. But AI can't think for itself right now the way a lawyer does. So if you're a lawyer from a specialist area, you're always going to be at the advantage. You're not going to lose your job, or your field is not going to go out of service thanks to AI. So that's what I feel about AI, and I'll explain a bit more about that before we come to the end of this second part of the lecture. Soft AI and hard AI. AI right now across the world is in the soft AI stage. Like I said, the first 32 squares of the chessboard. The reason for that is that AI right now mimics the outcome of a human being, but it can't mimic the internal processes of a human being. AI can't think like a human does, but it can give you the same answer that a human would. The reason for that is that scientists and people generally across the world, they don't have sufficient understanding of the human brain. We still don't know so many things about our human brain and how our human brain works. So without knowing how our own thinking faculty operates, we can't transfer and pass on this technology to machines. So Watson, for example, Watson doesn't think the way we do. Watson just goes through a large body of text and gives you an answer. It needs to be fed that text before it can give you an answer. Humans are not like that. We can think up something. We can just cook up an answer, which Watson cannot do. So, as far as soft AI is concerned, that's never going to replace lawyers. And it's not going to radically change the legal profession to the extent that hundreds of thousands of lawyers lose their jobs. Like I said, a few lawyers might do, a few hundreds or a few thousands might lose their jobs across the world, but soft AI cannot replace a lawyer. But at this stage, we should remember the linear versus exponential growth of AI. Once hard AI comes in, and once AI can think for itself, then the legal profession might be in the soup. And that brings us to the third part of the lecture. And this is a very exciting series for me, and I hope it is for you as well. So until now, I was saying how law shouldn't regulate artificial intelligence. I was saying that you should incorporate AI into your legal profession instead of regulating it. But in this part of the lecture, I'll be giving you points and reasons as to why artificial intelligence should be regulated. When I'm talking about artificial intelligence now, I'm talking about killer robots, military technology that countries across the world are trying to secure. Countries are developing artificial intelligence in military to develop killer robots, and this needs to be regulated. Lethal autonomous robots. Military experts have concurred, everybody has said that within the next 2 to 3 decades, lethal autonomous robots, which otherwise are called LARS will become a reality within the next 2 to 3 decades, 20 to 30 years. Close to 50 states across the world are acquiring technology for the specific use of military purposes. And the market leaders in this field, as usual, is China and the US. The US has published a 25-year blueprint on how it seeks to incorporate artificial intelligence into its military over the next 25 years. Now, the main issue that I'll be focusing on here, and I think with most lawyers, they might see this instantly, is that lethal autonomous robots will face very serious compliance issues with international laws that apply to wars. Prominent units across the world, such as the Harvard Law School's International Human Rights Clinic and Human Rights Watch, they have stated that lethal autonomous robots will not be able to comply with international laws, and this is a very serious issue. Let's just look at the definition of LARS and the reasons why they're being developed before I show you a short video. So lethal autonomous robots are robotic systems that upon activation, they can select a target, engage with the target, and attack the target without any human commander giving it the command to do so. It can think on its own, find the right target or the wrong target, and it can attack the target. Now, two parts to the definition. The first one, lethal. Lethal is pretty much straightforward. The machine, the robot, needs to be able to use deadly force. It needs to be able to attack and kill another human being for it to be lethal. The second part of the definition is a lot more interesting. It's a spectrum of autonomy, and there are 3 main checkpoints in it. Humans in the loop weapons, humans on the loop weapons and humans out of the loop weapons. Humans in the loop, this refers to a robot being able to find a target and attack the target with the assistance of human commander. Humans on the loop robots refer to systems that are able to do this without requiring the permission of a human commander, but the human commander can override the decision of the robot to fight and kill. Humans out of the loop, the third part of the spectrum. Now, this refers to robots that can think and kill human beings and any other beings without any human having control over the robot. So it's completely out of the loop. It's out of the military system. That's Fedor. It's the marvel of the Russian army. It's been unveiled, I think, a year ago or 2 years ago. Just watch this video and I'll tell you more about Fedor. This robot, Fedor, which a lot of you might have seen on Facebook at some point in time, it's developed by the Russian army, obviously for military purposes. It can shoot guns and has pretty much a 20 out of 20 bullseye record. It can drive cars. As the video said, it can use tools. And Fedor has a mind of its own. When it's bored, it can start working out and do push-ups. So it can recognize when it's bored, and it can recognize who is a target and when to strike. It is still in its developmental stages, but that is the state of artificial intelligence in military technology, Fedor. So, why are governments going after LARS? What is the necessity to use artificial intelligence in militaries? A few reasons. The first one, force projection. And what this means is that when a military uses a robot to fight a war, it will lose that robot, but it wouldn't lose human lives. So the number of lives lost on one side is dramatically reduced. Next, force multiplication. That one warrior can do a lot more jobs than an average human soldier can. Next, G-forces. One of the advertisements for a military robot stated that, can you keep your eyes open for 30 hours straight without blinking? A robot can. So a robot can withstand all the G-forces, whereas human soldiers will fail to do so. So this is very useful when you need the robot to deactivate a bomb, or it needs to do some surveillance missions. It can just stay awake throughout the mission, whereas humans will struggle. And lastly, the amount of stress, traumatic stress that soldiers undergo. 20% of the American soldiers returning from Afghanistan and Iraq were reported to have post-traumatic stress disorders, and a number of them attempted to commit suicide. So when you bring in robots into militaries, you can move humans away from the sources of this stress. Just for the record, right now artificial intelligence does not exist. Lars does not exist in the military field. We don't have a robot that can completely think for itself and behave like a human soldier can. But I'm going to show you a few examples of humans on the loop systems. That's the second part of the spectrum of autonomy. This is the Mk-15 phalanx, which is used by the US Navy and by many navies across the world. Its purpose? It can identify incoming missiles, incoming hostile aircrafts, and it can engage with these missiles and aircrafts and strike them down. Its decision to do so can be overridden by a human commander, by the naval commander, but it doesn't need the oversight of a human to do its function. Next. The CRAM, Counter-Rocket Artillery and Mortar Unit, which is the land-based version of the Mk-15 phalanx. Same function, it can identify incoming threats and shoot them down without necessarily requiring human oversight. This video is a bit old, but this is one of the most cutting-edge technologies in military artificial intelligence. Samsung TechWin R1 robot. It's got Japanese subtitles, so just ignore that. So this is a sentry robot. It's found along the demilitarized border between North Korea and South Korea. This robot is used by South Korea. It has a camera, as you can see, to identify people. It can identify people crossing the border by using heat and motion sensors. When it finds people crossing the border, it can shoot them down from 2 miles away with absolute accuracy. Samsung TechWin would ask the people crossing the border to freeze, would put across a wide range of questions to the supposedly hostile target. And if the target fails to answer the question, the robot can shoot the person down. Now, the South Korean army has said that shooting down the intruder will be a decision taken by the army. So the army will press the button to shoot him down. But electricians who built Samsung TechWin have quite controversially stated that Samsung TechWin has its own technology and it can choose to shoot somebody down if necessary. That's the part that asks questions to the intruder. If it asks you to put up your hands and you don't put up your hands, the robot has the authority to shoot you down. And that gun has a range of 2 miles. It can shoot over a distance of 2 miles. And lastly, this is Taranis. It's developed by the UK government. It's the combat prototype drone. The US has a lot of these drones, and this is the UK government developing the robot. For now, they're saying that this will be used for strictly surveillance and stealth missions. But this drone, it can autonomously find hostile targets, and it will be able to strike them down in the future. It's built with 2 weapon bays, which can be loaded with weapons in the near future. So those are some of the examples of the current technology, military technology, that comes close to artificial intelligence. Now, why is it a problem? As you might have watched some of the videos, some legal issues might be running in your head. These robots will fail a number of legal requirements in international law, the international laws of war, and international human rights law. I'll talk about a few principles. I can't talk about every one right now. The first one is the principle of distinction, which is quite straightforward. A combatant has to be able to discriminate between a civilian and a combatant. So if you're an army soldier, you have to only fight with other army soldiers or terrorists, but you can't fight and kill civilians. That's the principle of distinction, and it's one of the most important principles in the laws of war. Now the problem is, a robot will not be able to distinguish between a combatant and a civilian in the near future. Think about 26/11. A lot of terrorist attacks and a lot of acts of war happen in the middle of civilians. We don't have the army of country A and the army of country B meeting in a common point and fighting anymore. Most of the warfare is covert warfare, insurgency and terrorism. So in this case, a lot of insurgents dress themselves up as civilians. Think about a robot fighting this insurgent. The robot will not be able to classify him as a terrorist or a combatant, and he'll be able to roam freely through the country. So that's scenario 1. Think about the second scenario. The robot is fighting a combatant, and the combatant wants to surrender. The moment he wants to surrender, he becomes a civilian, but the robot will not be able to make that distinction for 2 main reasons. Firstly, there's no one agreed principle and definition of who is a civilian. The international community is divided on definitions of civilians. So without knowing who civilians are, how will you teach the robot to distinguish between a civilian and a combatant? Second reason, robots don't have the emotional sensor faculty to identify when a combatant becomes a civilian, when he wants to surrender. The robot doesn't have the battlefield awareness, and the robot doesn't have the emotional capacity to decide if that guy is giving up. So without all of these, a robot will almost always fail the principle of distinction test. The principle of proportionality, you might have heard of this as well. Any military action that is taken needs to be proportionate to the military aims that you seek to achieve. What this really means is that any military action that you take must not lead to excessive losses of life. The Additional Protocol 1 and the Rome Statute both make it a war crime to lead to excessive losses of life. Some people argue that robots easily overcome this problem, like they can reduce collateral damage. For example, they can select the most efficient weapon, which leads to the least amount of deaths, collateral damage. This might be true, but I still don't agree with it. Think about the drones that the US used in Pakistan and Yemen. They used drones to strike from America, and they try striking just one terrorist in Pakistan. But when that one terrorist dies, 100 to 200 civilians around the terrorist also dies. So the fact that a robot can proportionately attack is something that I can't exactly accept. Now, another problem is the hard proportionality problem. What is the hard proportionality problem? A robot might be able to select the most efficient weapon, for example, and it might be able to minimize collateral damage. But should it even use force in the first place? So human commanders go through this process where they have to decide, based on the context and facts in front of them, whether to use deadly force or not. And that is a hard proportionality problem. While a robot might be able to select the correct weapons, a robot will not be able to decide whether it should use force in the first place. Third issue, legal accountability. Like international laws of war, they operate on the fact that somebody at some point in time can be held liable for all the losses of life. Think about the criminal court in Cambodia. It's a war court, and it punishes all the people during the Khmer Rouge regime when they led to so many thousands of deaths. So accountability is the underpinning factor of international law. But when you're using a robot to fight, who is accountable? Can the robot be held accountable? Some people say yes, the robot can be held accountable. It can be brought to a court, and when proven guilty, you can dismantle the robot. The same way you would imprison a human commander, or you would hang a human commander. Now, would you agree that is comparable? By any measure, that is not comparable at all. Dismantling a robot is not the same as imprisoning and hanging a human commander. Some people say the human commanders in charge of the robots can be held responsible. Once again, this is a very tricky problem. The issue here is that a commander can be held responsible for the actions of a subordinate when he has knowledge of what the subordinate is doing. But think about those times when the robot loses connectivity with the commander and it chooses to act on its own and kill 20 soldiers from the enemy country. Now, the commander has no knowledge the robot has done this. In this case, who is to be held responsible? Who is to be held accountable? So, individual criminal responsibility becomes a huge problem once you start using robots to fight wars. Finally, weapons review. This is the fourth problem in international law as far as robots are concerned. Article 36 of the Geneva Convention places this obligation on states to periodically review the weapons that you use to fight. The reason that this obligation exists in international law is to ensure that every single weapon you use, every single mode of warfare that you use is legal. But the developers of artificially intelligent weapons, every single state like the US, China, they have refused, not outrightly, but tacitly refused to comply with Article 36. So what does the US do, for example? How does it pass the Article 36 test? Think about the drones that the US used in Pakistan again, the Predator drones. The Predator drone was developed as a surveillance aircraft, like Taranis of UK. The missile that's placed on the drone, Hellfire missile, was also developed separately, and both of these, the drone and the missile, separately passed Article 36 test. And then the US puts both of them together into one machine. And a US court has gone on record saying, because they've passed individual tests, Article 36 tests, when you put them together, there's no need for you to do another test. So that is how artificial intelligence can bypass Article 36. So we're at the last part of the lecture now. I've showed you how artificial intelligence is creeping into military activities and military robots. And I've showed you some of the legal issues that could arise once you use robots to fight wars. Now, once again, what do we do about this? The standard response has been, you have committees across the world that have been set up to expressly ban the development of these robots. Now, once again, I don't think this will be a very viable solution in the long run. The reason for this is, even if you succeed in banning military robots, you will not be able to ban developments in artificial intelligence. And as with any technological development, development is multi-purpose. So when bombs were first invented, they were used, dynamite was used to help blow up mountains and hills. It was for a mining industry's benefit. But the same bombs have been used by militaries in the future. Same thing with aircrafts. When aircrafts were invented, militaries used them for strictly surveillance purposes. But once you could add a weapons bay to the aircraft, they started dropping bombs. So just like that, even if you ban artificial intelligence in militaries, AI development is still going to continue, and the militaries across the world, governments across the world, they will find ways to incorporate AI into the military. So what I would suggest is that all the states across the world, they have to come together in the UN. The General Assembly has to pass a convention that deals with this issue directly, which deals with every single legal issue mentioned in this lecture and not mentioned in this lecture. It has to very strictly regulate the development of AI for the purposes of military. So that brings us to the end of this lecture. Just to sum up, artificial intelligence is the next big thing. We can't avoid it, so the best thing to do, tackle it head on, incorporate that into the legal profession. The machines are coming, it's best that we go to AI before AI comes to us. Thank you so much.